Good morning. Let's finish chapter 5 and then we start chapter 6 right after. Well, we finished up to ketone body. So let's see what ketone body is. If you burn fat but you don't consume it, what you're going to do with extra fatty acid in the blood? Remember, fatty acid, they are not water soluble.
So what can we do about this?
Well, the answer is liver is going to get this fatty acid and change it to the ketone body to make it water soluble. So ketone body are water soluble and is the result of excessively breakdown of fat. Why some people they break down fat too much? Well, the answer is if they are starving, if they don't eat at all. So what you're going to do, you're going to burn a lot of glycogen first. When you're done with your glycogen, then you have to start burning fat. And as a result, you release a lot of fatty acid. What if someone is diabetic? Diabetic people, they cannot bring glucose inside the cell and they cannot burn it because of lack of insulin. So as a result, they have to burn fatty acid or fat. Another example would be someone who is on a special diet for a long time. So liver is going to take fatty acid, turn it to a water soluble molecule is called ketone body. If you have too much ketone body in the blood, we call it ketosis. Ketosis would be very dangerous. This is the one that is going to cause patient to go to coma, and without treatment the patient will die. So what is ketone body? Well, ketone body is the result of attachment of two acetyl coenzyme A. So you attach two acetyl coenzyme A together to create one ketone body. What we're going to do with ketone body? Well, ketone body can be used by muscle, can be used by heart, and can be used by the kidney, but the cortex part of the kidney. You know that kidney is composed of three parts: the cortex, medulla, and of course pelvis. As you know, the kidney is composed of three parts. This part is called cortex. This part is called medulla, and this part is called pelvis. This part, the cortex, is going to use ketone body. Okay? We're going to talk about the kidney, of course, in this section of the kidney, but for now I want you to know that muscle, heart, and the cortex of kidney can burn ketone body. When ketone body comes to these cells of muscle and heart and kidney, they can break down into acetyl coenzyme A, and then it's going to go through the Krebs cycle and you can create energy. Remember, the main source of energy for brain is glucose. If someone doesn't eat any food containing glucose for over a week, then the brain is going to switch and using ketone body as a source of energy. Let's take a look at this diagram. We mentioned already that acetyl coenzyme A can go through Krebs cycle. We mentioned acetyl coenzyme A can create fatty acid. And right now we mentioned that two acetyl coenzyme A can create ketone body. I want you to know that acetyl coenzyme A also can change to cholesterol. Cholesterol is a building block for steroid and bile acid. Any product of cholesterol is called steroid. So for now, I want you to know that acetyl coenzyme A can turn into cholesterol, and anything that is derived from cholesterol is called steroid. So let's say vitamin D that comes from cholesterol is a steroid. And we have a bunch of hormones like estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, male and female hormone. They are steroid because they're coming from cholesterol. So anything that comes from cholesterol is called steroid. Bile acid is one of them. Bile acid also is derived from cholesterol. Bile acid is something you have in your gallbladder, and it helps to absorb lipid. We're going to talk about bile acid in this section of GI system. That is going to bring us to the metabolism of protein. So we finished now carbohydrate, we finished lipid. Now we're going to talk about protein. Let's go back to our original diagram. Do you remember we said protein is composed of a bunch of amino acids? If you eat protein, your body is going to break down protein to amino acid, and we're going to create new protein out of this amino acid. You need to produce new proteins. Many proteins in your body is going to be degraded. We need to produce enzymes, you need to produce new hormones, some there are proteins. So we keep producing protein. If you do exercise, then of course you need more protein. So you eat more of protein, you break it down to amino acid, and this guy is gonna be a building block for making new protein. So let's say you make good money and you say, okay, carbohydrates is a cheap food, I don't want to eat carbohydrate. Fat people, they're saying that it's a bad food, so you're gonna go and buy a lot of protein, a lot of meat, and fish is gonna be part of your diet. What you gonna do with this extra protein if you don't do exercise? Well, you cannot store protein, as you know. We cannot store protein. Either we build it as muscle during the exercising process, but if we don't need that extra protein, then we have to burn it. We burn it to amino acid. Amino acid is going to change to pyruvate. Pyruvate is going to change to acid coenzyme A. If you don't need to burn it to create energy, then it's going to go back to fatty acid and create fat. So therefore, we burn protein to amino acid to create new protein. If that doesn't happen, then we have to either burn it further or we have to turn it to fat. When do you burn it further? Well, if you burn all fat in your body and you don't have any fat anymore, then you have to start burning protein. Those programs that you saw in Discovery Channel, that kids who are very malnourished, and you can see even their rib cage, is because they didn't have anything to eat, so they burned all glycogen, and then they burned all the fat, and then they had to burn protein, so all the muscle is gone, therefore their rib cage can be seen. So in the absence of fat, then we have to burn protein to create energy. However, if we eat too much protein and we already have fat, then protein is going to come here. We don't need to burn it further because you already have energy. Acid coenzyme is going to change to fatty acid and create fat. As you know, we have 20 different amino acids. Out of these 20 different amino acids, our body can make 12 of them from scratch. So if you don't eat these 12, you still will be fine. But we have to eat the other 8 because your body cannot make it. Those 8 are called essential amino acid. Essential amino acid. In the case of children, there are 11 of them that children can make, and they have to eat 9 of them. So in the case of children, there are 9 essential amino acids. There is a table in your book that shows which one is essential, which one is not. However, we have 8 essential amino acids in adults and 9 essential acids in children. Now let's talk about metabolism of protein. What is going to happen when you burn protein? Here, protein is composed of a bunch of amino acids. When you attach one amino acid to another amino acid to another amino acid to another amino acid, it's going to create a polypeptide, or it's called protein. So let's now make sure you understand the difference between polypeptide and protein. As you remember from your biology, when you attach amino acid together, you create a chain of the polypeptide. If you make this chain of polypeptide to twist on its own, it's going to make three-dimensional shape. So the difference in protein and polypeptide is protein has a three-dimensional shape and polypeptide is only a chain of amino acids, straight chain. It's important for you to understand that if you heat up protein, first you're going to open up the three-dimensional chain. You're going to open up this shape. You're going to turn it to a linear form, which is called polypeptide. Polypeptide is not functional, but protein is. If this is protein or polypeptide, when you're trying to burn it, we call this process hydrolysis because we add water to it to break down. By adding water to it, you release one amino acid at a time. As you can see, amino acid is a molecule that composes of amino group NH2 and acidic group or COOH. That's why it's called amino acid. The difference between different amino acids is in this side chain, or it's called R group. This R group can be as simple as H or can be very complex. By changing this R, you create different type of amino acid. So all amino acids, they have the same common structure except the R part. Now, by adding water, you can separate one of these amino acids from the rest. Now, what we're going to do with this amino acid, how we're going to metabolize the amino acid. Here's my amino acid. to metabolize this amino acid, the first thing we're going to do is removing amino group, or NH2. That's called deamination. By removing NH2, the rest of this molecule, without NH2, is called an organic acid. It's going to be an acid. It's called organic acid. And then NH2 is going to change to NH3, which is ammonia. NH3 is pretty toxic, and we have to take care of this one. But before we talk about NH3 or ammonia, let's discuss a bit more about this process. When you remove NH2 and you create organic acid, in this process you also create NADH. Now, what we're going to do is organic acid. Organic acid are the members of citric acid cycle. Remember citric acid cycle? Every molecule that you see in this cycle, they are organic acid. So therefore, that organic acid can become part of this cycle. So organic acid is part of this Krebs cycle, but also pyruvate is an organic acid. So therefore, we say organic acid can be used in glycolysis in the form of pyruvate, or can be used in the citric acid cycle in the case of the members of that TCA. So what we're going to do is ammonia. We said ammonia is very toxic. So ammonia needs to be recycled. We're going to add another hydrogen to ammonia to become ammonium, which is less toxic. Ammonium needs to be taken care of. And that is going to turn into urea. The process of turning ammonium to urea is called urea cycle. The process of turning ammonia to ammonium to urea happens inside the liver. If for any reason the liver is not functioning, then NH3 is going to accumulate, and that is the cause of encephalopathy. Encephalopathy is the damage to the nervous tissue of the brain. This diagram summarizes what we talked about. Amino acid, you can take NH2 away from, it's called amino group. The rest is called keto acid, which is an organic acid. NH2 can turn to NH3 or ammonia, and then to the ammonium, and then to urea, which happens inside the liver. Now, what is another destination for amine group? If you don't want to turn this amino group into urea, is there any other way to deal with this one? The answer is yes, we can. Remember that member of Krebs cycles, they are organic acid. So what if I give this NH2 to a member of organic acid and create new amino acid? Remember, we have 12 amino acids that you can make. How do you make new amino acid? Well, the answer is by burning protein that you eat and releasing NH2. You can give this NH2 to another keto acid or organic acid to create new amino acid. For instance, let's take a look at this story. If I burn amino acid, any amino acid, and give this NH2 to alpha-ketoglutaric acid, which is a member of the Krebs cycle, then I'm going to create a new amino acid. It's called glutamic acid. What if I burn an amino acid and give that NH2 to pyruvate? Then I'm going to create alanine as an amino acid. What if I burn an amino acid, any amino acid, and give that NH2 to oxaloacetic acid? Then I'm going to create aspartate as amino acid. Do you see what's happening? So I can take this NH2 from any amino acid and give it to another organic acid or keto acid, and that is going to turn into a new amino acid. So in reality, do I need to burn NH2 to NH3 to urea? Not really. As long as I give this NH2 to new keto acid and create amino acid, this NH2 will not be dropped. Imagine that I have a ball in my hand and I say, okay, let's play this game. Let's do not drop the ball. I'm going to give it to you. You give it to someone else, and that someone else is going to give it to another person. So that ball is NH2. When I give this NH2 to another person, that person becomes new amino acid. If that person doesn't need that ball, it's going to give to another person. That person becomes a new amino acid. And this NH2 can go around in the classroom, and everybody's going to grab this ball and become a new amino acid. You may say, okay, then why do we need to go through this process? Well, the answer is, remember every time we play a game and I tell you, let's do this one, someone says, no, I don't like this game. I don't like it. When it comes to alanine, alanine is going to release this NH2, and alanine says, I don't want to give it to anybody else. I want to release the NH2. Alanine mainly is the cause of releasing NH2, and then we have to turn this NH2 to NH3 and urea cycle. Therefore, alanine, by releasing NH2 and turning to NH3 and going to urea cycle, itself is going to turn into pyruvate. By releasing NH2 from alanine, we create pyruvate. The same is true for aspartate. Aspartate also is going to release the NH2 to go through urea cycle, but alanine by far is the most important one. I think the important point in this discussion would be a couple of things. One is, by removing NH2, you create a new keto acid. This new keto acid, by accepting NH2, can create a new amino acid. And the enzyme that allows this process to go through and create deamination is called aminotransferase, that move NH2 from one amino acid to another structure. And finally, the coenzyme would be B6. Alanine is the most important amino acid that, by dropping NH2, creates pyruvate, and this pyruvate can turn into acid coenzyme A and create more energy. So if you burn protein to produce energy, mainly that would be alanine, because alanine releases NH2 and as a result create pyruvate, and pyruvate can turn to acid coenzyme A and go through Krebs cycle. This picture shows that, for instance, alanine is going to change to pyruvic acid, or asparagine or aspartate is going to turn into oxaloacetic acid, or glutamate is going to change to alpha ketoglutaric acid. AST and ALT, there are two aminotransferases. For every keto acid to be turned into amino acid, we have a specific aminotransferase. For instance, we have glutamate dehydrogenase is an aminotransferase. So I want you to understand that each transamination requires a specific enzyme. AST and ALT, they are not the only enzyme, but they are two examples of aminotransferase which happen to be the most important enzyme that we test for liver. When ALT and AST increases in the blood, we realize that there can be a liver damage, because ALT and AST, they are found in the liver cells, and damaging liver cells is going to increase AST and ALT in the blood. But again, ALT and AST, they are not the only aminotransferase. For every keto acid to turn to a new amino acid, we have a specific aminotransferase. And the last portion of this discussion would be about gluconeogenesis. What does that mean? It simply means making glucose out of anything but sugar. If you create glucose from non-sugar structures, we call it gluconeogenesis. For instance, if you create glucose out of pyruvate, or out of lactic acid, or out of amino acid, they're called gluconeogenesis. If I create glucose out of glycogen, that is not called gluconeogenesis, because glycogen is already a sugar. But if you create glucose out of amino acid, that's gluconeogenesis. To make glucose out of non-sugar structure, we have to, of course, spend ATP. This ATP cannot come from the sugar, because remember, you didn't have sugar, that's why you're making sugar out of another structure. So therefore, where are you going to bring ATP to create new sugar? The answer must be fat. By doing beta oxidation, you create ATP, and you can use that ATP to create new sugar. Also realize that gluconeogenesis happens only in the liver. Therefore, we say hepatic gluconeogenesis depends on beta oxidation in the liver. When someone is hypoglycemic, that means blood sugar is low, we mentioned that body is going to go to adipose tissue and release fat as a source of energy. As a result, by burning fat, we increase acetyl coenzyme A. When acetyl coenzyme A is going to increase inside the mitochondria of the liver, then liver understands that there is lack of sugar, and as a result, liver starts doing gluconeogenesis. In other words, liver doesn't know until acetyl coenzyme A is going to build up inside the mitochondria, and then liver understands that blood sugar must be low and start creating glucose out of other material. We can use lactic acid to create glucose. We can use amino acid to create glucose. we can use pyruvate to create glucose, and we can use glycerol to create glucose. These are four important elements that we use to create glucose. Remember, acetyl coenzyme A cannot change to glucose directly. Here's an example of gluconeogenesis. Specifically happens in the case of lactic acid. Let's say you are doing exercise and you release lots of lactic acid. What you're going to do with this lactic acid inside the skeletal muscle when you do exercise? Well, this lactic acid is going to come to the blood and it's going to reach to the liver. Liver is going to get this lactic acid, turn it back to pyruvic acid, and turn this pyruvic acid to glucose 6-phosphate, and then either cut this phosphate and release glucose in the blood or change it to glycogen. This process of bringing lactic acid from skeletal muscle to the blood to the liver and turn it back to glucose is called Cori cycle. Cori cycle is an example of gluconeogenesis, but specifically it's referring to turning lactic acid into sugar. And as a summary, let's take a look at the big picture here. We said we store glycogen inside the liver. We can change it to glucose. We can change it to phosphoglyceraldehyde. Phosphoglyceraldehyde can create glycerol, and then it can come down to create acetyl coenzyme A. Building acetyl coenzyme A create fatty acid, and by binding these two, we can create fat, but also we can burn fat into glycerol and fatty acid. Glycerol is going to turn to phosphoglyceraldehyde. Fatty acid can turn into acetyl coenzyme A. We can burn this acetyl coenzyme through Krebs cycle, or we can turn acetyl coenzyme into ketone body. With the same token, we can burn protein to create amino acid. Amino acid can release NH2 to create urea, and the rest can turn into either members of Krebs cycle or to acetyl coenzyme A. So as you can see, all the metabolism in the body are connected to each other one way or the other. And that's the beauty of biochemistry. The whole thing you see in this picture can be discussed in biochemistry in much more detail. And the last slide that we're going to talk about is what is the source of energy when you are in a well-fed state. That means you are not hungry, and when you are hungry. In the well-fed state, we said the main source of energy for a majority of our cells would be glucose, except for heart that use fatty acid. As you can see in the well-fed state, your liver prefers glucose, your resting muscle prefers glucose, adipose tissue prefer burning glucose first, brain rather use glucose, and the same as red blood cells. There are a couple of exceptions, and as I said, heart usually use fatty acid only, and liver also can use amino acid. However, when you're fasting, when the blood sugar is down, in that situation, your cells prefer using fatty acid, as you can see. Exceptions would be brain. Brain doesn't want to use fatty acid. Brain stays with glucose. So when your blood sugar is low, brain still is going to get glucose, although the other cells are going to switch to fatty acid. After 1 week, when there is no glucose, we said brain has no choice but move to the ketone body. RBC, on the other hand, has no choice. RBC always uses glucose until there is no glucose available. The other exceptions that we mentioned before is we can use ketone body in the skeletal muscle. We can use ketone body in the heart as well. That is going to bring us to the end of this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it, and we are done with chapter 5. I'm going to come with the new recording for chapter 6. Have a good day for now.